Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining. So, in light of the result of the elections, I thought that it would be a very good opportunity for us to talk about democracy, discuss democracy, and to see if the concept of democracy for Judaism resembles in some form or shape the American or the contemporary concept of democracy in political science. So I will be very interested in trying to find similarities and differences between what Judaism understands for democracy and what social science understands about democracy. So what I will do, I will allow you a few minutes to read the sources. And there are some guiding questions associated with the sources. I would hear some noise here in the room, so do that with a partner, as it's normally the Jewish way to read sources. So discuss with someone, have a conversation with someone about the sources. I will allow you a few minutes, and then we will come together and we will do a reading, a collective reading and discussion on them. So find a partner, at least one person. If you need, it can be more than one person, but try not to be alone, not to be by yourself, because in Judaism we believe that when we read things together, we have a better understanding and enhanced learning experience. Before we get to the sources, I want to ask you a general question before. I want to learn from you if you came here before reading these sources with the understanding that democracy coincides with Jewish values, or is there any difference between what the Jewish values defend for society and the civil concept of democracy? What do you think, before getting to the sources, if the two are in agreement, in 100% or not? What do you think is the relation between Judaism and democracy? Yes.
So
Bruce.
if we go back into history, way back into history, there was the Code of Hammurabi, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it was before Hammurabi, but Hammurabi was sort of the first encapsulation of a code of behavior. Mm-hmm. And Judaism evolved as the Code of Hammurabi started and came to be. And so that was with the initial seeds from which our Constitution came, and government evolved, and democracy was formed in its purity. In reality, that's a different story.
Anyone else on your preconceptions on the relationship between Judaism and democracy?
I think there's a certain consistency between the two, even if they're not explicitly copying. The idea of an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Although I guess we understand that it wasn't really enforced, but that was the sort of a harsh, strict rule, and yet the concept of that, I think, was then taken and built into democratic governance, but with a lot more subtlety or room for to add on to that, to not be so strict, but the principle, I think, resides in there, even though, I guess we don't really have a true democracy anyway, but so yeah, I think there are, you wouldn't, I don't think you can call it an exact match, but there are principles that are in both.
Okay, so let's start reading in a moment. Just a comment on the Hammurabi Code, because this is something that when I learned in my law school about the Hammurabi Code was mind-blowing to me, to understand that it was an advancement in law, because before the Hammurabi Code, revenge had no limit. And the idea of an eye for an eye is that if your aggression was so that you had one eye damaged or taken off, you should not take more than one eye from the other person. So the idea is that before Hammurabi Code, you could, because of one eye, to take someone's life, and sometimes the entire family's life or entire village's life, because of one eye. And the Hammurabi Code came back then to say, no, revenge has a limit. You can take maximum what was taken from you in the first place. When we read today, eye for an eye, it sounds to us very, very violent, very, very.
That this is what you should do, not as a limit, but what you should do.
Right.
If somebody harms you a certain way, you should do the same thing back
Because
to them.
at some point in the development of the law, we understood that even taking an eye from the person that took your eye is not accepted, it's not allowed, and it became a monetary compensation. In the time of Talmud, we read ayin tachat ayin mamon, meaning eye for eye means money, means a monetary compensation. So you should evaluate how much that eye costs. So how much less that working person is making because he lost his eye or hand or whatever, and then you translate that amount into a financial compensation, which is what we do today, actually. The judge gets to some number, some value, and says, because of the damage you caused, you should pay X. And there is also the psychological damage, which is also a later development. They would not talk about psychological damage back then, but this is also a more contemporary development, that today you don't only compensate the person for the physical damage, but in addition, for the psychological or the moral damage.
Very literally, we have that. There's something called workman's comp law, where if an individual is injured on the job, loses an arm, loses an eye, a foot, a toe, whatever, there's a value placed on each of these items, and the person is reimbursed by that law, paid for by the insurance company and the employer, to give him back money for the value of his injury.
Okay. But in the beginning, the Hammurabi Code meant an eye was an eye, an actual an arm was an actual arm, so the person was able, and a life was a life, so the revenge existed back then, and it was afterwards transformed into the monetary compensation. So let's start reading those principles and see how Judaism and democracy as a secular value converse with each other. So Barbara, do you want to read the first one and maybe we will start coming
Sure,
from there
okay.
to here?
The value of a community's voice, Talmud Bavil Barachot 55a. A ruler is not appointed over the community unless the community is first consulted. Now here are some discussion questions. What does the text suggest about the importance of community participation in leadership? How might this idea align with democratic principles of governance?
Okay, so what do you think about this first quote?
Interesting, because I think the first king was appointed by God. In Jewish history was appointed by God, but there was
So,
yes, but there was consultation because Shmuel asked
represent-
for a king, and God said, "You think you want it, but you don't really want it. A king
It's
is
not
a
going to
problem."
work.
And of course, God was right, amazingly. But so there was consultation and even advisement on what God thought was a bad system of government. Interesting, because God has been representational historically too. I was thinking, but of course that's still before when everyone's in the desert. Moshe decides that he appoints a group of people who then appoint another group of people who appoint another group of people, so that everyone has some kind of leader to report to, and then it goes all the way up the chain, but everyone is represented. And I used to know the Hebrew name for what that is, but I don't. But was interesting, and that's a long time previous to the king.
The
Yeah.
Sanhedrin, you mean?
Gee, was there a Sanhedrin in the desert?
It started
It's
there.
here, then it must be,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. So one thing I wanted to call your attention to is that it's kind of weak here that the community is first consulted. It doesn't not mean that the community will decide who is the ruler. And it's kind of too weak for me when you compare to the contemporary idea of democracy, that the people determines, the people decides who will be the ruler. The people is not only consulted, because when you consult someone, you can either follow or not. It's more of an advice than an actual decision-making process. Yes.
In that same semantic looking at things, I look at the word appointed.
Yes.
Instead of saying elected,
Appointed.
this is going to be an appointed.
Yeah.
So you can consult all you want,
Mhm.
but you're not going to be the one who's making the decision. Some higher authority is going to appoint. And they didn't use the word elect, which would have been more valuable to the consultation of the people.
And also, I want to bring to our reality today, to Trump's election and to his ministers or his cabinet. In our system, we decide who is the president, and then the president decides who are the people working with the president. So we could think of a system that each and every of those people should be elected, or there should be a body. So some of the people
Have to be
will be
approved.
confirmed by the
They-
parliament,
They
right?
have to be approved.
Everyone?
Yes,
Every one of
they
them.
have to be
Everyone?
approved by
Okay.
the
Congress.
Congress.
They
Senate,
have,
the
but the
Senate,
Congress
Senate.
can be in such a pressure that they cannot say no.
Well, it's more
Correct.
than
So
that.
this is
be-
what's happening
The
right now, right?
formality?
No, it's
Yes.
more than that.
No,
because
no, it isn't a
The
formality.
Senate must approve the cabinet members. However, the head of the Senate can call a recess. And then
Yeah,
if there's this is what people are very afraid of now. If there's a recess, then they can just be appointed during the recess without consultation.
Which is
of
an
the Senate.
unfair trick,
Me-
That's
right?
never been done.
It's
before.
the same in Brazil.
Yes,
Yes.
Could I just ask a
Wow.
question?
okay.
If the Senate is Republican,
Mhm.
aren't they going to give less argument to the appointment of Trump's?
Yeah, of
So
course.
then,
Well, but in
Unless
some
they're
cases,
truly-
Trump is
Well, that's what
appointing
I'm trying-
people who Republicans hate.
Unless these
so
people are
so that,
themselves.
that process
Yeah.
of,
Yes.
of
Yeah.
confirming
Yeah.
is very much biased.
Yes.
Well,
That's why, I mean,
course.
it's
the whole
important to
issue.
have a system of checks and balances. And if you have one party that just takes over the whole process, as has happened this time,
it
then
doesn't work.
they can bypass a lot of formalities and approvals.
And I understand that in the Senate right now, like, though, even those Republicans, they are not so friends with people who are being appointed. They are afraid of saying no because they will be fired. So it's deeper, the issue.
Except the Senate can't be fired. They've been elected. The senator can't be
But
fired.
they will
Yeah, but
put
they'll
on the
never-
side.
They'll never be elected again.
They will
Well,
put on this, they will be
Yeah,
put on the
There-
side.
There's a lot of power that comes from the party that funds them in their future
Yeah,
election. And if the party doesn't give them that funding,
yeah.
they're not
They
gonna get
end
elected.
of career.
Also, Trump has said that this is, his administration is gonna be the administration of revenge. So if someone goes against him, he will hurt them. He can't fire them, Senator, but he'll
No,
make
but he
their
can
life
take them-
difficult.
You can fire them from the cabinet role,
Yeah.
right?
Well, no,
Okay.
but if a senator votes against his cabinet members, for example,
He
he
doesn't
can
have
make
to-
sure that they don't get.
He's on
make
your
it-
side.
But the issue is that I think that we've identified is that by the president being able to propose cabinet members and other appointed positions, that I was going to say, that's a great amount of power. Obviously, you can't say you're fired from the Senate.
Right.
But he can say, all right, you're not going to be my chief of staff anymore.
Mm.
If you're going to do this thing, which is,
Or you're not gonna get committee appointments.
yeah, right.
Or you
There's so
might
many
get
ways.
For your state.
Right, there's
There
so
are
many.
plenty of ways that you can hurt people without actually having the ability to fire them.
Mhm, mhm. Bruce, let's read the second one, please.
Number 2, justice as a foundational principle. Talmud Bavli, Sanhedrin 32b. Judges must always ensure that justice is served, and they must not show favoritism or accept bribes.
Well, that doesn't work very well, does it?
Deuteronomy.
Or sleep with 17-year-old.
You're not making this very easy, Harold.
It's too easy.
Deuteronomy
If judges are
16:20.
elected versus appointed, that comes up in this one, right? If judges are appointed, the community is not consulted, except that the person who's doing the appointments were probably elected.
Mhm.
If judges are elected, at least the community is being consulted, but many judges are appointed.
And even the ones that are elected are sometimes endorsed by all four parties.
Yeah, the
so
one-
they might
That's
as well
true.
be.
That happened in Nassau, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, every one of those
Right.
judges in Nassau County was on all
Right.
four
Yeah,
parties.
But it's,
Yeah.
it's not exactly
were
true. of the
choices.
Supreme Court, for
Take it to the
instance.
highest level. Look at the Supremes.
I'm looking at the
judges.
And if you
Supremes,
look
right.
at the Supremes, not the musical group,
Yes. How I wish it were true.
they were better, I think.
But
But
all
anyway,
federal
if we look at
judges,
the Supremes, who have followed the person who appointed them's
Mhm.
decision, call that favoritism if you'd like. Then now the judges are no longer impartial and they're
Yeah,
doing.
but the judges, ultimate, federal judges have to be approved by the Senate. The Senate has to approve all federal judge appointments. So there is
an
If
illusion.
it's the
a
same party,
balance,
if it's
an
the same
illusory
party, then
balance.
it's not. it's the
Yeah,
same
but
party.
it's like when Obama appointed Merrick Garland to be on the Supreme Court, and the Republicans decided not to even give him a chance. And then they pushed through Amy Coney Barrett in 3 weeks.
And then there's Clarence Thomas.
But look at the favoritism that they swung with Roe versus Wade.
Mhm.
Simply because whoever the appointing president and then confirming Senate was, they reversed the process.
I
and
will tell you,
Roe-
in the past, that wasn't the case. In fact, before this whole craziness, about 1/3 of the people appointed to the Supreme Court ended up taking positions the opposite
Yes.
of what people
yes.
thought they would take
Yeah.
when they were first appointed. So,
And the flip side of favoritism is to is persecution. Right? When you go after people just because they are your opponents,
Right, well, that's the
Mhm.
thing we're worried about, the revenge.
the revenge, right? This is the flip side of favoritism.
Anybody watch TV in the last month? See plenty of revenge and castigation on television.
Bruce, we have an additional source.
Yes.
This one is very well known.
Deuteronomy 16:20, justice shall you pursue. Discussion questions. How do these texts emphasize fairness and impartiality in governance? Can we see parallels between these principles and the concept of an independent judiciary in democracy?
So,
So what does democracy look like? How do you see democracy in this country?
So it's
Are you pleading the fifth?
I think that the
like
flaws,
Brazil.
the flaws of democracy here are not very different from the ones in other places. We see that democracy is a good system, but it's not a perfect one, and it can lead to unfortunate realities. Despite of being well correctly
Minister?
administered or correctly.
But I don't think it is. I think that's a big argument. I don't remember what we really are, but it's not a democracy. It's one of the other
It's a
seals.
representative
Meritocracy, whatever.
I believe that the elections here in the US were fair. They were fair. They were transparent. They were just. They were fair. But it doesn't necessarily produce the result that one would think as the ideal result. So this is difficult. I don't remember who was the one that said that democracy.
So the best. It's like the worst kind of government, except for all the others.
Is a very
Benjamin Franklin.
Benjamin Franklin.
Something like that.
Yeah.
But I have a question.
Yes.
Money plays a very big, important part, unfortunately, in our democracy. And it plays a very important part because of the super PACs, who are huge money groups that support and actually pay for all the advertising done in favor of their desired official. And the super PAC money comes from pharma, major corporations, et cetera, et cetera. So our new potential education person gave millions and millions and millions of dollars through the super PAC funds to support Trump's election. More than once did she do this. And he's
But I
thanking her.
understand that Harris's campaign
Yeah.
had more money than Trump's campaign, far more money.
Yeah,
Yes.
$1.5 billion.
And
And-
she couldn't
and-
speak about many issues because she had the support backing her.
Yes.
She had to keep quiet.
So yes, it's true that money plays a role, not here, everywhere in the world. But you see that here, the campaign that had less money won. So money is not the
Well, yes,
fact.
but they both had too much money. They
Right.
both threw a lot of money around in the most horrible way, but
Well, if they
few
use it
people are not
effectively or
getting
not.
positions in the cabinet.
It's
A lot
also
of billionaires are getting positions,
Right.
right?
The billionaires, those that funded him.
another big problem with the democracy, this is the two-party system, which really throws you can't. I don't think you can actually have a democracy on a two-party, layered on a two-party system.
This is different in
You
Brazil.
gotta go one or the other,
Yes.
you
In
know.
Brazil, we have several
We have that in
Oh.
England,
And Israel.
We-
No, but
Too
it-
bad,
those are
too
different
bad Sandy
systems.
isn't with us to explain the way it works in Israel, which he'd love to do.
No, but democracy is based on two basic concepts, which is the alternance of power and free speech. If you have do you say alternance? Change?
Alternative.
Alternatives?
No. Alternancia.
Alternates when
Alternate?
when it's
Alternate.
changing from one to the other.
Alternatives, yeah,
Alternates.
alternates when, yeah.
Alternates?
It alternates.
Alternate.
It goes back and forth.
Alternatives?
Alternance of power and free press. If you have those two basics, then it's a democracy. Not necessarily it's a good democracy. Not perfect, never perfect, but there is democracy.
And we've got both here.
Yeah.
Well, I think people are very easily swayed. I mean, it's shocking to me how many people voted against their own interest because they were swayed by,
Yeah.
commercials and like fancy, slogans that it was very
Trucks
easy.
running around with flags. and-
Right.
One example is the Muslim community in this
Yes.
country
Yeah.
who voted against their own interest.
I mean, they didn't seem to
Also,
remember.
also blacks, the Latinos.
And
But-
and women in vote in favor of abortion and men.
I mean, it's really shocking how many people who were like blue collar workers voted for a billionaire who is going to do things that will favor other billionaires.
Who is famous
Right.
for not paying his workers.
Right.
And it's taxes.
And his taxes, right?
But
Right.
I think that the issue
Change it
here is not who won, but what's going to happen with democracy. Because it was like a fair election. Okay, so majority won. Okay, people can vote whoever they want. Okay, so I think what we are talking about now is like what's going to happen next. Is it going to continue to be a democracy? I think like me as a foreigner, I am very afraid. This is like I come from South America, so many dictatorships.
Seen this
government
before.
like I haven't. I was born already in a democracy, but I hear from my parents. But again, so many Latin people voted, and they weren't afraid of the democratic values to disappear. So it's another thing. But okay, that's
Also,
the-
thank God they weren't afraid to vote.
yeah. So free elections, and and sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. It's all right. I think. I don't know. I'm trying to find what's coming next with those.
Let's see. Let's continue. So, number 3, Irene.
It's scary. It's
Yeah.
very. The rule of law, Talmud Bavli, Gittin 88b. The law of the land is the law. I'm gonna pass on the Hebrew rabbi.
Dina de Malchuta Dina. And I'll give you a tip here. When you see Aleph at the end of the word,
Mhm.
it's not Hebrew, it's Aramaic.
Oh,
Yes, the same role that the Hey has in Hebrew, the Aleph has in Aramaic in the end
Okay.
of a word.
Hmm.
Dina de Malchuta Dina is Aramaic, and it means the law of the land is the law. And this is a very, very important Jewish concept because we live and lived in foreign countries that the Jewish law was not the law. And we had to observe and to respect and to follow the non-Jewish legislation. And this is what we should do. When you decide to live in a country that is not governed by your traditional religious rules, you should accept the rules of the country you are living in. And this is very important because it's still a debate how much the state should take into consideration the religious laws and how much there should be a total separation between church and state, between religious laws and civil laws. This is still an issue when you discuss abortion, for instance. The Christian conceptions of conception, the Christian conceptions of abortion and of life. When does life start? When does life begin? Play a role that should not be playing because we are talking about. So in Brazil, I had the opportunity to participate in a public consultation on abortion, and they called the different faith communities to come to the Supreme Court to tell the judges what their traditions have to say about the beginning of life and abortion. And I have this privilege to be there, to being there representing the Jewish community in the Brazilian Supreme Court. Juliana went with me to Brasilia and to the Supreme Court.
To testify that you were there.
Yes, to take some pictures and to celebrate this beautiful moment. And but it was very clear that the religions were not there legislating. The religions were there just to add a layer for the consultation, but the final ruling would be secular.
So maybe
Not
in
Jew-
this
not-
case, being
A Jewish or Christian or
consulted,
Muslim. Yeah.
maybe this is the first being consulted. The first one that says a rule is not appointed over the community unless the community is first consulted.
This is a consultation, right? It's not a decision-making process. Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Were the judges swayed by the consultation from all the different religions? Did they bring that into their decision-making process, or did they go by their own?
A decision was never taken yet. And
Oh,
it,
really?
it,
A
Yes.
change.
so the parliament is the body that should be legislating and about, but the problem in Brazil in particular, that the parliament is very, very evangelical. And the judges sometimes by deciding on a specific case, they try to establish legislation coming from the judiciary and not from the parliament in a way to confront the parliament that is very, very traditionalist and Christian. So this is what happens in Brazil.
There's
It's
a
forbidden.
Christian,
Abortion is forbidden in Brazil. unless
Oh.
like for
unless
rape
the,
or
the life of the woman is
in danger
in danger
and
or
and rape.
or-
That's all.
or the pregnancy is a result of rape, and in case of the absence of rain, the acephalia,
Yes,
Encephalitis.
yes.
No, it's acephaly.
Yeah,
Acephaly.
when
Acephaly.
the
It's
fetus
encephalitis
does
is an
not,
exclamation.
the
Yes.
fetus does not have a brain.
Yeah.
There are people in this country that wouldn't even allow those exemptions.
Yes,
See,
that's
the problem
right.
is like
It's
what
all or
happened in
nothing.
Texas. There was a woman who was really in trouble and wanted to be able to have children in the future, and it wasn't working. The pregnancy wasn't working. And it first has to go before judges, and then the judges make a medical
She's dying.
decision, which they shouldn't be doing. And
Meanwhile, time is passing.
time has
Yeah.
passed, and now all of a sudden they go, you know what, you passed you could do it, so sorry.
The
Or-
3
or
months.
They
Yeah.
made the woman go to another state.
It's okay.
And
It's a disaster.
Yeah, there is a Christian parallel, okay? It fascinates me, but Jesus said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's, which is
Mhm,
whatever the state wants, the state gets,
mhm.
and render unto God what is God's.
And
I
also
think
the idea, yes, the Christian idea, which is also Jewish, that inside your church, you practice your religion. Inside your home, you
Mhm.
practice your religion. But when you are outside, when you are in society, you respect the rules of the society. So when we lived as Jews in the shtetl, in the ghetto, the judges were the rabbis. They were the one who decided. And they were the policemen too. But when we started living in the society, then we had to respect the law of the country, of the land, of the place we were in. What we do inside our homes is our private issue with some limitations too. We cannot be violent inside our home either. But the way we bless, the way we daven, the way we pray, it's our issue. But when it affects other people, when we are acting as a social agent, we have to respect the law.
Yeah, but we were talking about the case in France, for example, that hijab was prohibited, or then it's not that clear.
It's not that simple because there are sometimes religious manifestations that happen in public, like wearing a kippah, wearing a hijab. And so yeah, where is the limit? One of the cases I discussed with the bar mitzvah students from that book, You Be the Judge. It's a very nice book with theoretical cases, is that a Jew is about to witness before the judge, and the judge says to the Jew, I want you to take off your kippah because it looks like your testimony is more important than the others. Should the Jew take off his kippah or not? And there is a discussion, a debate, but if the only way for the person to testify is taking off the kippah, yes, should take off the kippah, because testifying and helping justice to be accomplished is more important than wearing the kippah, because as we know, kippah is a tradition, it's not an halacha. There is no halacha.
But if it
regarding
was,
kippah. If it was, you would have a conflict, but still, I think you should take off the kippah because it's an halacha before God as opposed to an halacha before man.
no, I agree.
Okay.
It's instead of pikuach nefesh, it's pikuach justice.
Right, equal justice, right,
So
exactly.
in Brazil, is there a process when a woman needs an abortion
Yes.
or an underage uh, child needs an abortion?
It's
Is
a lawyer.
is there a speedy process or does it languish like it does in some of the
As
states?
of the
in this country?
legislation today, the only cases that allow abortion is when the life is being threatened,
The mother,
the mother's life, yes, or it's a result of rape.
Rape. So a 14-year-old girl who got herself in trouble would not be allowed to have an
Right,
abortion.
unless a judge in that
Mhm.
particular case decides otherwise.
Cheryl, we
Also
don't
the
say got
judge.
herself in trouble anymore.
Oh, I know, excuse me. But I'm
I'd
talking.
like to see that, right?
It's,
Yeah. So
But I'm talking to Carol.
all right.
It's all right, it's all right.
So this is the way the judiciary plays a role because that particular family can go to the judge and say,
Oh, yeah.
please decide on the particular case. And the judge can decide against the legislation for that particular case because the judge will take into consideration several other aspects more broadly issues, right? Miriam, next one, number 4.
Majority rule. Talmud Bavli, Bava Metzia. After the majority, must one incline. Achar,
Acharei,
Acharei,
that's all I know.
Rabin, Lechatot.
Lehatot.
I
So
could have
after
done
the
it.
majority, very good, Miriam.
very
Very good. Good job.
so this one.
After the majority must one incline. Achrei Rabim Leatot. Again, it's beautiful. The majority is taking into consideration, but it's not yet deciding, determining, right? It's about inclination. It's not about decision making.
And also,
Yeah.
nowadays, a democracy is considered democracy, depending the way it treats the minority.
Right.
Yeah,
We will get there.
I think in order to have a
That's a good
real
question.
democracy, there should be among the people sort of a social contract that, you know, you're gonna do good for the whole population.
Not only for those
not just
who
you.
elected you.
Not just you.
Yes. So this is the number 5, the next one. Number 5, maybe Cheryl, if you can. please.
Balancing authority and individual rights. Talmud Bavli, Sanhedrin 8a. A king may break the law when it comes to the needs of the kingdom. How does this text navigate the tension between centralized authority and individual or community rights? How might this tension play out in a democratic system?
So the interpretation here about the needs of the kingdom is the idea that you take into consideration the whole society, not only the majority. You take into consideration the entire kingdom. You take into consideration what the small minorities need when you take a decision. Even if it's against the law, you should make sure that you are listening to everyone. You are taking everyone into consideration, because sometimes the law will respond to the elite, but the law it will not respond to the minorities. But they are also part of the kingdom. They are also part of the society. And the ruler can go against the law in order to contemplate the needs of the kingdom, of the society as a whole. Lisa, let's read the next one.
Human dignity and equality, Genesis, chapter 1, verse 27. And God created man in his own image. and Pirkei Avot 3:18, beloved is man, for he was created in the image of God. How do these texts establish a foundation for human equality and dignity? In what ways do these principles align with democratic ideals?
I think the most powerful idea in Christian, Jewish religions in general is that we are created in God's image. I think this is the most powerful thing. Because if you accept it, if you understand that, then everything else is artificial creations of mankind in order to organize society. We are not born with nationality. We are not born with social status. Yes, we are, but it's not innate. It's not part of who we are. It's not part of our essence. Our essence is not Brazilian or American or Canadian. Our essence is not rich or poor. Our essence is not even male or female. Our essence is being human beings, created in God's image. So the opinion of one should not be more important than the opinion of the other, regardless of anything. But when you bring it to reality, we have a lot of challenges, including, I would say, in addition to gender and economic status and nationality and everything else, I would say education. One of the, I will dare saying, one of the reasons that we are where we are is that the majority of any given country is not highly educated. And the vote of one person is the vote of one person, regardless of how educated the person is. So, yes, it's a big challenge.
Is there anywhere in the Talmud or wherever else that states or gets the idea across that that not only were people created in the image of God, but are to behave in a godly way? I mean, it just seems logical to me that it wouldn't be limited to just literally what people look like. And you might say, well, that establishes the equality idea about why we should all respect one another and everybody has rights. But it almost seems more important that talk about walking in God's way or something.
I don't know where it says it, but it's God is kind, you be kind. God is compassionate, you be compassionate.
The same way God is. So not only be created as God in God's image, but behave in God's image. Keep on being created every day again in God's image by the way you act, the way you behave.
And the way you keep your mouth shut.
Keep what?
Weren't there times
No,
though?
just
That
checking
one's
the
not in
time
there.
because
Yeah,
of
we have to
Minyan.
go for Minyan, right?
It's
It's
7:31.
Okay. Yes.
The worst
Weren't
thing
there
is
times that
Lashon
God
Hara.
was also though vengeful and
We
very
should-
harsh?
We
in
gotta
his
get there,
thinking?
okay.
We should have a
Or-
part B. We should
God
have a
thinking?
Again, Bruce?
Weren't there times that God was also vengeful
Yes.
and harsh?
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
go ahead.
That's
That's
an
not-
excellent question.
Not the way God wants us.
So maybe acting as God is sometimes disapproving God.
You wanna hold this for the next time? We can do it
Okay,
again. We
so
should-
let's have part 2. I think it was a very fruitful, insightful and thoughtful conversation. Thank you so much, everyone. And let's go for Mariv